God is not dead, he has transformed. The reason why so many have left God behind is because the version that they have willed is dead.
I put the question to you that the debate for this night is, this House regrets the death of God. To open the case for side proposition, I call upon Sera Besev from Worcester College, and the Director of Press.
Good evening, members and guests. I would like to thank the President for affording me the opportunity to speak on a motion that bears great relevance to the discourse shaping our today and tomorrow. I would also like to extend my gratitude to Professor Todd Hedrick, who engineered my philosophical mind and whose efforts are the sole reason for my competence to speak here today. I anticipate that the motion for which we are arguing will manifest numerous interpretations amongst the audience, many of which being irrelevant or simply incorrect. I further anticipate witnessing mentions of existentialism, religious doctrines, and science, all in coalition to question the presence of a higher power and the implications it posits on the human condition. On that note, I'm all the more excited to honor Friedrich Nietzsche, a man who did not regret the death of God, as I contend why Nietzsche himself would be inclined to speak for the proposition were he able to attend our chamber today. But ladies and gentlemen, before I set forth the substance of my argument, I have the privilege of introducing the speakers for the opposition today. Speaking first is Fontan Lowenstein, a DPhil student in cardiovascular medicine at Exeter College. Fontan is also a fellow friend and the Director of Communication here at the Oxford Union. He does, in fact, communicate with me every Monday to pass on his absence at our committee meetings. Fontan, it is great to finally be able to host you at the Union, and thank you for sparing me the opportunity of passing on your absence on this special occasion. Our second speaker is Victor Maraquin Marino, a graduate of St. Cross College, where he read for a master's in Latin American Studies. He's also an elected member of the Union Secretaries Committee. Those who are acquainted with Victor will know that he has a habit of running in elections. Having run for office and lost, and ran again and lost, and ran again and lost, he has a track record, tale as old as time, almost as unsuccessful as the president. Given that Victor is running for election yet again, I'm surprised he does not regret the death of God. A higher power is the only thing that will save him. Also speaking for the opposition is Dr. Sean Carroll. Dr. Carroll is a professor of natural philosophy at Johns Hopkins University. He specializes in the study of quantum mechanics through the philosophical lens and is the author of numerous works defining the relationship between the meaning of his existence and the philosophy of physics. Having tried to digest some of those works, I have reason to believe that God himself regrets the creation of the human race. Last but not least, is our speaker, Professor Peter Atkins. Professor Atkins is a fellow of Lincoln College here at Oxford and a professor of physical, chemistry, and supernumerary. I commend his commitment to atheist ideologies whilst remaining relevant in the academic league since his first ever publication in 1967. I needn't comment further on his achievements, for his faith in science evidently falls short that he is with us today to debate what 58 years of scientific research alone cannot seem to answer. Gentlemen, I'm honored to share this evening with you and feel Nietzsche's presence surround me as I recall his statement, "The woman is unspeakably more wicked than the man, also cleverer." Mr. President, these are your guests and they are most welcome. I want to begin by addressing a necessary clarification. I fear that the motion can very easily diverge into a conversation on religions and their various comprehensions of a higher power. While Nietzsche's personal convictions do deny the existence of God, his contestation of a divine influence is not a response to religions as we know it, nor is it a normative attempt to undermine the possibility of an infinite higher power. Instead, his reflections are just that, reflections. He observes the early stages of what he believes to be a distinct decline in religious authority within society, conveying that the ideas, prescriptions, and expectations of religion no longer execute the impact that they originally held on humankind. Those who consider it otherwise commit a grave error in judgment. I now depart from any regard for proving or disproving the presence of God and deem said regard a centuries-old pretentious effort to conceive the inconceivable, further surmising that any such conclusion will not manifest itself in this chamber today. However, I believe a common ground demands one thing, a certainty and a constant. That is, God begins in the mind and is an idea. To what reality it extends and to what extent is a concern for another time. Thus, I base my argument on the premise that believers have, at a minimum, a concept, a thing. If, I quote, we have killed him, Nietzsche then considers not the absence of God, but the extinction of something that first required a form of existence. That is the idea. This idea is less about God than it is about people. Nietzsche reserves many of his essays to condemning any practices for which a self-denying nature is a requisite. His concept of asceticism projects the attempt to identify what is good in affiliation with a sense of abstemiousness. Forms of social conformity, as well as the rejection of certain ideas and desires, convey self-reduction and ascetic behavior. He states that the ascetic ideal has meant so much to human beings that it is an expression of the basic fact of the human will, and it prefers to will nothingness than not to will. Thus, I myself do not regret the death of God as understood by Nietzsche. For those who continue today to exercise his statement, where you can guess, you hate to calculate, continue to represent not religious text, but merely ignorance. His text, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, illustrates Nietzsche's use of prophetic language and biblical style in narrating the path to self-liberation and deviation from the restraints of religious ordeals. In later years, he reflects on Zarathustra as an idea that came to him, he stole upon him. He rightfully denies Zarathustra as a prophet, but what then does Zarathustra become? God as an idea. Nietzsche's own godlessness creates within him God as an idea. His godlessness bereaves him of something great and affords him even greater regret. That is, the loss of self-will at the cost of liberation. He criticizes human error, but he himself exists in such a state. We all fear truth, he claims, and that becomes what he does. I find it logical that Nietzsche would rather condone this conclusion than he would agree to willing nothingness in the name of self-consolation. It seems that even for Nietzsche, the appearance of such guiding ideas is necessary to protect human submission to becoming what Zarathustra calls the last man. Nietzsche tells us that all one had to do was to revalue all values in order to think of, to actualize Zarathustra. In other words, Zarathustra begins in the mind, and in the mind, it is an idea. God is not dead, he has transformed. The reason why so many have left God behind is because the version that they have willed is dead. Yet today's world is riddled still with dissatisfaction and nihilism amongst both the atheists and the theists. So as we walk the earth as the last men, it is important to learn from Zarathustra as God, as an idea, or as a story. Nietzsche was right to defend the overcoming of man and the rejection of ascetic ideals. What he neglected to address was the coexistence of a scripture which both guides and liberates. This death deserves to be regretted and is a death that will linger for, I quote, thousands of years in which his shadow will be shown. I invite my audience to not only read Nietzsche, but to experience him. For the death of God is challenged and resisted through only the permission to experience. He writes that no one can extract from things, books included, more than he already knows. What one has no access to through experience, one has no ear for. The event of Zarathustra exists some 6,000 feet beyond man and time. And he adds, man lies at a tremendous distance beneath it. So, it is we who must travel to the idea. It is we who must dare to seek, we who must dare to will, not the other way around. I conclude today with the following quote. You say you believe in Zarathustra, but of what importance is Zarathustra? You are my believers, but of what importance are believers? You had not yet sought yourselves when you found me. Thus do all believers. Therefore, all belief is of little account. Now I beg you, lose me and find yourselves. And only when you have all denied me will I return to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to concur. Thank you.